Hello, wonderful coaches out there. This set of tips that I'm bringing to you today is for people who are probably at the beginning of their coaching journey. And really, it's designed to serve as a set of reminders as much as they are tips for coaching. So let's get started. And I've got 6 to share with you today. So, tip number 1, get very clear in your own mind about the difference between coaching, mentoring, training, counseling, all of the different hats that we might wear, especially if you're a person who is a leader and you might wear all of those different hats at some point in your day or across a year. It's really important to know the difference. Because when we put on our coaching hat, there are a set of ethics that we really should be following. And coaching is all about asking the right questions and not bringing too much of ourselves that imposes a way forward. It's about trusting that the individual is whole and they do have answers inside them. And the role of a coach is to help them find those answers, to bring them out in a way that is uniquely for them. Then there's mentoring. Mentoring does have a presupposition that is, I do have a skill set or a knowledge set that is greater than the individual that I'm working with. And this is a real distinguishing factor, in my mind anyway, between coaching and mentoring. And it's fine to have a blended relationship if that is something that has been agreed between yourself and the person that you're working with. When I get asked to coach and or mentor, I get very clear with the individual and I explain to them, I give them a definition of coaching and I also give them a definition of mentoring. And I say to them, if what you are asking me for are answers based on my background and my experience, I will make decisions as to whether I'm happy to share that with you in the environment that we are in. And the way that I might do that is through the use of the language of hats to say, the question that you've just asked me is, can I tell you a better way to do something? Well, if I have that skill set and that background, I might very well say, I'm now going to take off my coaching hat and I'm going to put on my mentoring hat, knowing that I'm about ready to share with you some of my experience. If that's the way you want me to go, then I'm more than happy to do that. All right. If you're a person who is skilled in mentoring and training and coaching, it's really important that you have that clear distinction and which hat you're wearing at what time for what purpose. All right, next tip, contracting. Contract everything. This is one of the pieces of a coaching process, especially for novice coaches, that I find gets overstepped, forgotten, or not explored deeply enough. At the beginning of a coaching session or at the beginning of a coaching relationship and at any point during the entire coaching process, I like to make sure that I'm contracting along the way. Contracting is another word for an agreement that's made. So we're making an agreement as to what we're going to get from the end of our session today. We're making an agreement as to the kind of method or the time allocation for this. We're also contracting about the types of things that we will be addressing. So are we going to have a contract that says absolutely anything and everything can be brought to the floor in our coaching relationship? Or is the purpose for our coaching relationship about specific performance elements in a person's job? So contracting is important. It's one of the things that as you get much better at contracting all of those steps along the way, you're going to find that your coachees will move faster in their development. They're going to get more out of your coaching relationship because you've made agreements up front. So that leads me to my third tip, which is begin with the end in mind and get very clear. What is the outcome from our entire relationship? What is the outcome that we are looking for the end of this session? By the end of our session today, we will have, and it's getting them to step into what is it that they want and get very clear about that. So there's a whole lot more on creating well-formed outcomes. I just wanted to throw that one in as a solid reminder for you. Number 4 on my list is thinking about the concept of storytelling. When coachees come to us, quite often they get stuck in the reliving or the storytelling of what's going on for them. Part of my contracting helps me to make an agreement about, I want to seek permission if I feel that you're getting caught in story. I would like to take some steps forward to help you come out of story so that we can find path forward. Sometimes I'll contract that. Other times I'm going to use tools and techniques. The key there though is quite often the longer you stay in story or you allow your coachee to stay in story, the more stuck in fact they become. And the journey to finding the way to new developments, expanded ideas, those sorts of things gets harder and harder for them the more time they spend in story, because story is generally what had them stuck in the first place. All right, number 5 is honesty with integrity and compassion. Sometimes coaches find themselves in a stuck place where they need to speak a truth to the coachee. And they get a bit concerned that speaking that truth could be challenging. And it's about knowing when to have, I guess I would call it the iron fist in velvet glove, and call a person on something. We can still do that compassionately. That's the velvet glove. Sometimes coaching needs to be a bit fierce. It needs to be, and it doesn't mean brutal ever, and it doesn't mean unkind, but it does mean direct. To get a person to move toward what they said they wanted. So honesty is the truth, integrity is how it's being backed up, and compassion is the delivery mechanism. So my final tip for your consideration today is to watch out for coaching addiction. And this would be true for coaching, mentoring, training, counseling, all those sorts of things. Sometimes people can become addicted to a relationship and a process, especially if there is emotional content that they might be dealing with in their coaching session. That release of emotions can feel cathartic for people. The question is, do they keep inventing new things to come back to have more and more emotional release and more catharsis? What's really happening with the coaching relationship? And sometimes when I find those things happening, it's good to call it and to say, perhaps it's time for us to change coaches and coachees if there's more coaches in an environment, or just to make the person aware that these things are starting to happen. So coaching is wonderful to come to if there is true movement forward and if there is benefit for the individual that's being coached. If they continue to come back, is it because they're coming back to an experience that isn't in fact moving them forward, but it's coming back to an experience that they're in fact getting stuck in? So I'll leave those for your consideration, and happy coaching.